So I want to thank all of you who joined us today to hear a little bit about the work that's happening in the school district. And Krista, your comments were so timely. We're fortunate in the city of Federal Way to have a chamber that fundamentally understands the role that schools play in building up a community. But more importantly, Becca, you've been so adamant about the role that the school district plays in terms of economic development. And we're pretty fortunate to have you at the helm, and your leadership does not go unnoticed. I'm going to be sharing with you just to give you a big picture of where we are right now, and want to remind you we want to be in school right now as well. As you know, there's a guidance that was put out by the governor that says they want communities to be around 75 or below cases per 100,000 of COVID before you can start to think about gradually returning your students back to school. When I looked at the last numbers, we're at about 233 per 100,000. So we're quite a ways away from face-to-face instruction, but I want you to hear a little bit about what the people who are leading the buildings, the principals, many of them who are here today, and the work that we're doing to ensure that even in a remote environment, we're giving scholars what they need. This quote I wanted to share with you, it's "The storms make trees take deeper roots." And I think that is so true this year, because I have never in my 20 plus years in education had to engage in learning in the way that we've had to start a school district off. This has been by far the most challenging thing I've ever had to engage in as a leader. And we're basically having to rebuild our school system for a remote environment, a school system that's built for face-to-face. We've had to take it and transport it in a digital context. And here's what I will tell you, our teachers are still innovating and reaching out and touching our scholars. Our building principals are now working in a virtual way to create a nested community of learners with their scholars and their staff. They're doing that, and they're doing it day in and day out. And the innovation that's happening has been pretty powerful. We will be a better school system because of COVID. I do believe that. There are some days that I say to myself, am I really saying that? But I know that we will. We will be better. And here's why I think we will be. Our scholars, our staff, and our parents will be much more technologically savvy than they would have ever have been 2 years ago or a year ago. Our scholars are now online practicing skills in a digital way that they never would have before. And our staff are going to be much more skilled at personalization in a remote environment. And this is because we've had to learn how to do it. And the last big nugget, I think, is that our parents are at home right now learning about their children as learners, and they're going to come and engage with the school system with much more advocacy around what their children need. And so I think our parents are going to be more equipped to partner and to advocate for their young people, because they're at home learning a lot about how they learn. So I want to give a sense today of where we are right now with remote learning. And then I wanted to do a little bit of sort of a retrospective, looking back to see what kinds of accomplishments we have realized as a school district. This is my 6th year as superintendent in Federal Way, and I think it's a good time now that we're through the first cycle of our strategic plan to look back. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about what's next. Because as I said, the school district, we're not returning back to that school district we were before COVID. The ground has shifted underneath our feet, and there are things that tell us we will be entering a very new environment. So who we are: 37 schools, 23,000 scholars, 107 languages spoken at home, and this number fluctuates. You know, there was a presentation I did, it was 114, but we're constantly assessing where our scholars are. About almost 70% of our scholars receive free and reduced lunch in Federal Way. And we're the most diverse district in the state, the 5th most diverse district in the nation. I want to acknowledge our board who's joining us today. They just learned that they are a board of distinction for the 5th year in a row. And we also know that we're in the running to possibly, there's another award that may be coming. They haven't announced it yet, but maybe there's something even bigger to come. And we will have an announcement here in the next few weeks about the work that's happened in the district. And the boards are given this recognition based on the outcomes that are happening in our schools, our grad rates, all the things that the staff out in those buildings are accomplishing as a result of the policy decision that the school board has focused on. And I really want to applaud this particular board for staying focused at that policy level, staying focused on the work, not being distracted by external things that some boards can sort of get themselves distracted by. This board has really stayed focused on the main thing, and I really want to applaud them and congratulate them for being recognized a couple days ago as a board of distinction by the Washington School Directors Association. Our strategic plan drives everything that we do. And honestly, here's the truth. Had we not had our clear goals, it would have been hard to transition in a remote environment. Having yourself clear about what you're about means when there's a time of stress, you go back to your values, you go to your goals and your metrics, and that actually helped us to decide what remote learning is going to look like. And I want to tell you, literally dozens of parents who email me who would say they have friends in other districts and the support and structure that we're building, that they're not seeing that in other districts. And again, I want to applaud the central office team who's worked closely with our building principals, who are working closely with our staff, who are working closely with our families. And that's an attribution to that broad-based collaboration. So let's talk a little bit about where we are. We listen in this district. That's something we pride ourselves on. And when we built our remote learning model, we listened to approximately 16,000 of our students, parents, and staff gave us feedback on what we needed to do to make that model strong. We surveyed our scholars, about 5,000 of them. And we then pulled together a committee that had about 100 plus parents and staff together talking about what would our continuous learning plan be, either if we were a hybrid or if we were remote. This group helped design that. And I have started something that I think this is how we'll never be, we'll go back, because I now meet monthly in a Zoom format with parents from across the district. And that has been absolutely powerful. And I've asked our principals to do the same thing. And it's a way for us to increase and deepen our communication, so parents have a way to feel like they can actually have two-way conversations with our school district, and we can listen to them real time to make adjustments. And as a result of that, we launched our continuous learning planning committee. You heard me talk about that. And these two resources that are in front of you, we printed copies of these actual handbooks for our families so they would know how to navigate remote learning or hybrid learning. And we did the same thing for our staff. And what this has allowed is a consistent application of our strategies at every school. So no matter which school you're at, if you go to Canvas, you should see a similar experience. No matter what school you're attending, if you're in second grade, your instruction is consistent. It's not left up to each building. That consistency is so critical. And that's the kind of feedback that we're getting from parents. They really appreciate it. And we're making sure we're translating this in our top languages. We purchased an additional 5,000 laptops to distribute to scholars. That was not something we budgeted for, but we did that because we knew we needed to have laptops in the hands of scholars so that they could access learning. And then before we started instruction, we had 2 days for virtual orientation, where we basically explained to them how it all worked. Again, that was consistent across all of our schools. Okay. We also have a program called the School to You program. And the way this works is that we know that we're not picking up scholars in our school buses. Our school buses, though, we didn't want to dismantle our transportation system so that when we do go back to hybrid, our buses are there. And so we're delivering school supplies and learning materials at bus stops across the district every week. We're basically taking school to our scholars and making sure, again, access to these materials is not a barrier. Our nutrition services team has served almost 500,000 meals since the first day of school. That's how, again, we're continuing to recreate our system and to provide these services, even though we're not in a face-to-face model. I want to really give a shout out to people like Shelley Pauls, who reached out to me in March, and when they knew that the we were about to do this sort of what I call the urgent the urgent COVID response. And she was like, what can churches do to help feed some of your families? And these are the churches, the faith-based partners who stepped up and went to apartments and delivered meals. They did all of that. And so we have a phrase in Federal Way where we say schools can't do it alone. I just want to really give you, look at all of these folks who did this. And I just want to give them a big shout out. Because of their support, we were able to add 9 additional meal sites. One of the things that people are asking is, so what is this remote learning? What is it looking like? And what I will say to you is that when we look at attendance in Federal Way, this again has been one of our high points. 94% of our scholars are attending school daily for synchronous or asynchronous learning on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. 94%, and we track it. So it's not like because they're at home, learning's not happening. We are having a full court press on attendance. We're tracking that data, and that's a metric that we follow closely so that when we do come back in a face-to-face model, our scholars are ready to be successful. We also survey our scholars to get a sense of their social emotional well-being, and 80% of our scholars in grades 3 through 5 reported that they have supportive relationships with friends, families, and adults at school, while 77% of our 6 through 12, our secondary scholars, report that same thing. Again, we don't just use test data to measure our success. We're talking to our scholars firsthand to get a sense of how they are feeling, because we know that you've got to have a scholar who's feeling pretty solid in terms of their social emotional well-being to be successful. Here's one pride point that we really are excited about. We have over 50% of our Federal Way Public Schools kindergarten scholars who attended ECAP, Head Start, or were tuition paying peers, and how they are coming in now ready for kindergarten. And so we're seeing an increase in that number of scholars who are coming in more prepared than they were in years past. We also know that this is because of the early learning convenings that we've been doing. And we've also got a program that we started 2 years ago called Bright Futures, where we're pulling pre-kindergarten, so before they're in kindergarten, and we're taking them through a couple of months of instruction to get them ready for kindergarten. Again, investing in early learning. And I think if we've got anyone who can advocate for more of these types of funds, that would be a really good way to start to close those gaps that we see for some of our scholars. And here's another example of the idea that we're seeing them coming in more ready. And we've even convened our local childcare providers to give them ideas about how they can help us prepare scholars. We've also in a conversation right now that we're having with I believe it's the Gates Foundation, looking at how we can increase the possibility of having more early learning opportunities in some of our facilities. More to come on that. Here's one of our big celebrations. Our recent graduation rate is at 88.2%. That's an all-time high. And I want you to look at the rates over time, and you can see they're slowly increasing year over year. And I attribute that to our principals knowing every single scholar, the goals we have in Goal 5. We've got a central office team that goes out and partners with the principals to say, tell me about this student. What do they need to graduate? We look at it child by child, and we track it closely. So that means almost 9 out of 10 of our scholars are graduating in Federal Way Public Schools. And we're continuing to increase this metric. Here's another point when you think about grad rates. Federal Way Public Schools is more than 5% higher than the roadmap region in terms of the number of scholars who are taking these dual credit courses, meaning that they can get credit for college, as well as it tells us that they're having a rigorous experience. So they're not just graduating, they're having rigorous courses that allow them to be competitive for 4-year, 2-year colleges, apprenticeships, and all kinds of post-secondary opportunities. And so it's not just about the paper, it's about the rigorous experience. And we're really proud of this and seeing that we're minimizing those gaps. We do work to make sure that our scholars are signed up for financial aid. And you can see over the last few years of my tenure, we're increasing that, because it's one thing to want to go to school, but it's another if you can't afford it. And so we're making sure our families know how to complete those forms. And that's another metric that we track in Federal Way Public Schools. I hope what you're seeing too is that we're not just paying attention to one data point. We've got multiple data points, leading and lagging measures that tell us whether or not we're on the right track. And for the class of 2020, we're 20% higher than the state average. So we're tracking how we're doing with the state. And so that's another pretty powerful point to look at in terms of pride. We've increased our career and technical education offerings. We have increased dual credit offerings from 9 to 42 courses eligible for college credit, meaning we have more courses that we're offering that a scholar can actually get dual credit at a local college. And so I think that's a pride point. We're also adding to our career pathways, meaning scholars can take a series of courses and then get certification, and it helps them to get a sense of what they want to pursue in their career. And we find those courses actually create meaningful engagement and make scholars want, I think it increases their attendance and allows them to really see the value of some of the abstract ideas that they're learning when they can see this in those particular courses. So that's sort of this idea of what we've seen. Now what I want to do is just kind of focus a little bit more on this idea that, you know, success is a sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out, meaning it doesn't happen overnight. It's not overnight. It's incremental. You just have to stay the course. And I think that is so important for us to remember that. How many of you remember at our strategic plan that we launched back in 2016, and we said these were the goals that we were going to focus on? Becca, you were a part of many of those sessions. We haven't veered away from it. We had our stakeholder group, over 100 of you who helped us. We had all these community forums back then, and that's when this plan was launched. And over time, we built a culture focused on scholar voice, united as one team. I was pushed a lot about why are we calling scholars scholars, and we've stayed the course on that because we're going to speak their greatness into being, and our data suggest that because we've had those high expectations, we're seeing the positive outcomes of that. We've set goals, talked about our theory of action. We have scholar voice everywhere in our organization. We've also been focused on equity. We developed a race and equity policy 2 years ago. We pulled together the community for that because we believe that we want to be an organization that's leading for equity and that is leading to be an anti-racist organization. I think now more than ever, this is the kind of work that districts should be doing. It's grounded in our core beliefs. It's developed, you heard me say, with stakeholder voice and input. We passed the largest bond measure in Federal Way Public Schools history at $500 million. Our community continued to support our EP&O levy. We launched a Mentor and Me program. We had our last year's State of Ed at our Federal Way High School PAC, and look, we had a full house. 600 of our community came and attended, and we have had such powerful partnerships. And here are just a few of you who are in attendance today, some of you who are not, who have done so many things: scholarships, backpacks raised, actually working in our schools, at our secondary schools, helping our families. Just tremendous support from so many partners that we have. And I just want to take a minute to just say thank you. The Coats for Kids that South King just did a couple of weeks ago was tremendous. And although Korean school's not meeting at Taft-Holly right now, that's a fixture in our community, in our school, and we value it. It's going to be one of the focus points that we have when we launch one of our newer schools, when we start to think about dual language and offering some strong experiences with the Korean language. We've continued to provide supports on our curriculum across our school district, offering these particular tools for families. We've increased scholar and family engagement. You heard me talk about the scholar advisory to the superintendent. Principals now are doing the same thing. We have our SOAR group, our Students Organized Against Racism in our school, our In It Together family partnerships. Just lots of ways that we're bringing together voice across our system. Here's another pride point. We can't do this work without our families. And when we look at our SLC attendance, we're looking at about almost 100% of our families and scholars attending these scholar-led conferences. We're also expanding something called STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we're doing that with things like girls in engineering clubs, FIRST Robotics. We're looking at how we can offer little, we call these Phiros robots for our second and third graders in elementary school, where they're learning to code to take advantage of the plethora of jobs that are located in King County. And so this is another way that we're, Becca, when I think about when you say the school system is so powerful for the local economy, this is how we're doing it day in and day out across our schools. And when you look at Washington State, when you look at Federal Way, anyone wants to find a place to bring their babies to school, I want you to look at this. We're outperforming the state average on our grad rates. We're steadily increasing. And a lot of times, I want to say this, people don't think the most diverse district in the state of Washington will be seeing these kind of results. And we're seeing it while we're offering our scholars dual credit and honors courses. This is about rigor. And so I think this is another pride point for our school district. And with that, I want to include Scholar Voice, and I've asked one of our scholars who's been on my superintendent advisory for the last 3 years, Santorini Sneed. She's a senior at Thomas Jefferson. She's been here over the course of a lot of these changes. And so Santorini, will you just say a few words, tell this group a little bit about your experience in Federal Way and what you've seen happening since you've been matriculating through our system over the journey of our strategic plan?
Yes, I'm happy to. Hi guys, I hope you guys are doing well and staying safe. So here's what I wanted to share with you guys today. So my whole life I've been observing people. I mean, aren't we all? Over the last 4 years, I've gotten to observe Dr. Campbell and her staff in a more personal way as a member of her scholar advisory team. And while my observations do not address scholar perspective as a whole, it is my perspective, and I'm glad to get to share it. As an elementary scholar, I observed people in the district as I sat in these blue chairs while my mom attended teachers' trainings. Everyone always seemed so fancy, suit coats and ties, PowerPoints, and loud voices. Once I got on the scholar advisory, however, my perspective began to change. I began to learn about the people in the district, their roles, stories, how they got there. I even landed a babysitting gig with one of them. Yes. I began to see that these people that seemed so distant in their fancy attire were actually just people who wore fancy clothes to work. They have families and interests and a life outside of work. What a concept. People at the district care about scholars and their futures and put in a lot of time and energy to work with Scholar Voice. I have brought up issues to Dr. Campbell's attention, and she's addressed them in a really timely manner that has really helped my situations. Dr. Campbell and her staff have also provided opportunities for scholars to speak up on their opinions, specifically regarding the remodeling of schools, articles that are being sent out to families, which is really important because community matters, and what scholars are experiencing in schools. And although Federal Way public schools is not perfect and there's much to improve, I'm glad that Scholar Voice is being included in some fashion and hope to watch that expand further and further so that we can grow. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Santorini. And I really appreciate you reminding us that we still can get better, because that's our theme. We always talk about how we can get better as an organization, but we're going to, as long as we keep listening to brilliant scholars like you. Thank you. So as I start to wind down, I want to tell you what we're up to and what we're sort of conspiring on next to continue to improve the system. And I want you to look at these beautiful faces. And I miss our scholars. This has been so hard not seeing them face to face, but here are just a few of their faces. One big highlight is we're starting something called our new Entrepreneur Incubator course through CTE. And basically it's a way that our scholars can learn how to start their own businesses. Often what I hear parents say is we want them to have these real world experiences with their checkbooks and how to actually be financially sound. This particular course will be at all of our comprehensive high schools and TAF at Sahali. And I sent a team to go and observe this after seeing it myself when I was in Austin at a school down there. The scholars were actually designing a business that would track the school bus system. They were making profits from it. And so we want this kind of dynamic experience. And so we're bringing this to Federal Way Public Schools, and our career and CTE department have been focused solely on this, and I couldn't be prouder of the work I know that's going to happen as a result of it. You heard me talk about our work in being an anti-racist organization. I want to be transparent with you. We've been reading and learning on this. Our school board has, our staff have. We've read books like Courageous Conversation, Cast, How Everyday Anti-Racism, and How to Be Anti-Racist, just to name a few. And we've had training on this. And this is what we believe. We believe whether or not you're the most diverse district in the state of Washington, or if you're a district that has very little what we call racial diversity or even linguistic diversity, every district should be learning about this. We've got to, in this world, learn how to communicate with each other, see the value in each other, and to do this in a way that builds up our democracy. And this particular conversation is a cornerstone of the work that we're doing in Federal Way. It's embedded in our strategic plan, and we are walking to the fire on the conversation. So one of the things that happened over the summer, I had about, I want to say 6 scholars who came to me and said, Dr. Campbell, the district's not doing enough. And I think you heard Santorina intimate a little bit of that. And they asked me, what would it look like if our school district were really anti-racist? Well, I said, you know what, you guys, you're asking this question. Why don't you tell us and tell the school board? At our most recent school board, they did just that. And I wanted you to hear what they had to say. What does an anti-racist school look like?
Well, just not treating people like they're less, or just not treating people differently just because they're race.
And I think that hearing those feelings and actually acknowledging that those fears are real is really, really important to an anti-racist school, because feelings are real and feelings are the way that racism starts. And we have to acknowledge that.
I mean, talking about Federal Way specifically, since, you know, we're super diverse and a lot of students bring a lot to the table, because we all come from very unique backgrounds and have unique traditions and cultures. You know, I think it would be important that schools take into account the different like holidays we celebrate. For example, like we get 2 weeks for Christmas, but you know, in spring, he doesn't really get any days off. So I don't know, it's just one example.
So for me personally, I think that every student should be welcome no matter what color of the tone of their skin, the color of their hair, their shoes. They're all accessories that belongs to them.
Last year I was in a heritage Spanish class, and all throughout the year, you know, I was learning Spanish, and I was among native students who like natively spoke Spanish, and so because of that, I was the only white student. But as like the only white student, I never felt, you know, uncomfortable because of my race. I never felt, you know, not welcome. It was always a very respectful place, and I'm grateful for that. And so I just kind of thinking of that, you know, in like a modern lens, that many students of color, if the roles were reversed, they wouldn't feel the same way. So I just hope, I really hope that, you know, the same experience I had can be, you know, created for students of color.
What do you think of the school district right now in terms of its commitment to anti-racism?
I'm from TJ, and this summer I think it was in August, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who goes to TJ. But there was a swastika painted on campus. And we never heard anything from anyone about it. The only reason that everyone knows about it is through social media and because people were like, hey, this happened. So while I think we have a start here in Federal Way, I think compared to other school districts, I think we have a good start. But I think we really need to expand on this, increase awareness, and especially increase action. I think that's what would be best.
I think the school can do a better job of making people aware of racism and do a better job of making sure school districts and schools are being more of a school that's anti-racism.
Hi guys, my name is Leah. But I put down there's no awareness, and what I meant by that is throughout the year, there's only one day a year for the high schoolers and all that. They'll it's called celebrate yourselves and all that, and that's embracing your culture, letting everybody know who you are, what your ethnicity is, and you know what, that's a great thing. But out of functions and all that within the school, it's always the students who are promoting that there's always students that are doing way more than the school telling everybody we need to stop this, we need to do this. They're organizing their own little thing, and it's way more than what the school is doing, because you only got a club, and then you don't really get the message out when you're in school, because not everybody takes it seriously, not everybody reads the posters. So I feel the district is doing somewhat of a job, but it isn't entirely, being dealt with, because I know some kids who have struggled with, getting their voice out there within the clubs and all that. And, it's a great thing that I see. But personally, I feel like the district can do way better.
So I wanted to share that with you, and I want to be transparent with you, and I want to act like we've got all the answers, but I will tell you we're pursuing solutions. And the first way you do that is to put it out there, and our kids are telling us that we can do better. And so I just want to share their perspective with you. We are also excited. Many school districts have school-based health centers. We're about to have our first one open up at Taft at Sahali. And these school-based health centers have academic benefits in that they decrease absences. They will be providing mental health counseling, health assessments, sports physicals, and immunization. The second one will be located at Thomas Jefferson. And almost all of our surrounding school districts have this, but we know we're one of the most underserved in terms of providing the kind of mental health services our scholars need. And we're excited about this opportunity. And we're partnering with Health Point on this. So there will be more information to come. I wanted to give you an update on our school construction projects. So if you look, this Wildwood and Lake Grove Elementary are on track to be complete in December 2020. You can see the buildings there. Mirror Lake Elementary is on track to be ready for the fall of 2021 for a move in there. Again, this is what that $500 million is purchased. It's going to be infrastructure for the next 50 to 60 years for our city. Thomas Jefferson is to be have a move in of fall 2021, and here's some celebration. In our partnership with unincorporated King County, we're under budget. Our permitting process allowed us to get in a way that we now will have savings. And so as a result of that, we're going to be able to do some of the fields at Thomas Jefferson that we didn't think we could. So I'm really proud of our project team for managing the project, but also the collaboration we had in making sure this project is moving along in a timely fashion. Star Lake Elementary is on track to be complete the fall of 2022. Total Middle School is on track to be ready for the winter of 2021 and 2022 move-in. Also say that we're already planning Olympic View. It's in the pre-design phase. That's we're also going to have a dual language program. You heard me referencing how we will have a strand of Korean that we'll be doing, we'll be implementing at that site. Illahee Middle School will enter the design phase in 2021. And then Memorial Stadium is scheduled to have some work done in 2024, but also will tell you we're doing some early work at Memorial Stadium because we plan on having our graduations there beginning this coming, if COVID allows us to do something like that, as early as for the class of 2021. But we're starting to do some early work at Memorial Field so we can utilize that facility. Certainly to come, and here are areas where we know we've got to get our third grade reading. We're constantly thinking about how we can get more of our third graders reading on time. We're also looking at attendance as a big issue, and then increasing our rigor in our courses that we're offering. The journey is never ending. There will always be growth and improvement and adversity, and the way that systems can recognize that is by, just putting it out there. We still have places that we've got to grow. I will start to wrap it up with this. The future of the world is in our classrooms today. The future of the world is in our classrooms today. And ultimately, these scholars.